I'm Rachel Connors, 33 years old, and last Monday, my mother told me not to come home for Christmas. She didn't say it with anger. She didn't yell. In fact, she said it like she was reading from a shopping list, calm, casual, as if my existence didn't require any emotional energy. "Don't come home this year," she said. "It's just easier that way." That was it. No explanation, no room for protest, just a decision handed down like a verdict. I stood in my apartment kitchen in Denver, clutching my phone with one hand and the edge of the counter with the other. Outside, snow was just starting to fall. I had a half-wrapped gift basket sitting on the table, homemade preserves, locally roasted coffee, a candle I knew she liked. I'd planned to drive up to Oregon in 3 days. Now I just stood there staring at nothing. I'd be lying if I said I was surprised. There had been signs, missed calls, conversations that trailed off. Last Thanksgiving, she forgot to tell me about the family dinner until the night before. My older brother Ryan always got a seat at the table. Me, I was the afterthought. But this was deliberate. No sorry, no love you. Just don't come. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Not anger, not yet. It was something colder, a kind of hollowing out. The realization that maybe I had been trying too hard for too long to matter to someone who only ever saw me as an option, never a priority. I didn't cry. I didn't call back. I just turned off the stove, pushed the half-wrapped basket aside, and opened my laptop. If I wasn't going to my mother's house for Christmas, I was going somewhere that still held a piece of who I used to be. My grandmother's cottage. It had been empty since she passed away 6 months ago. No one wanted to touch it. Too old, too cluttered, too not worth the trouble, according to Ryan. But I loved that place. It smelled like lemon tea and dust and wild mint. It held every warm memory my childhood home lacked. And maybe, just maybe, it held something else. 3 days later, I pulled into the long gravel driveway of Grandma's cottage. It was late afternoon, and the air in Oregon smelled like pine and wood smoke. My breath clouded the air as I stepped out of my car suitcase, in one hand, keys in the other. The house looked exactly as I remembered. It weathered white siding, green shutters, and that narrow porch where she used to sit in the mornings with a shawl draped around her shoulders and a mug of hot lemon water. No one had touched it since the funeral. After she passed, my mom and Ryan said they'd figure out what to do with the place later. Of course, later became never, and the house just sat quiet, untouched, waiting. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was cold, but familiar. The scent of dried herbs still clung to the walls. Everything was just where she left it. Her rocking chair beside the fireplace, the crocheted blanket still folded on the couch, stacks of National Geographic magazines from the 90s lined up neatly on the coffee table. It was like walking into a memory. And for the first time that week, I exhaled. I wasn't home, at least not in the traditional sense, but I was safe. That night, I lit a fire, made tea, and wrapped myself in Grandma's blanket. The silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful, but there was something off. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. There were tiny signs, little things out of place. A cabinet left slightly ajar. A stack of letters tucked under the radio instead of the usual drawer. A photograph missing from the mantel. It wasn't alarming, not yet, just odd. Before I went to bed, I found myself standing in the hallway by her sewing room door. It had always been locked as far back as I could remember. Even when I was a kid, she said it was just storage. But that night, I noticed something new, a small envelope wedged beneath the doorframe. Yellowed, unmarked. I bent down and picked it up. My name was on the back. Just one word in her handwriting. Rachel. I didn't open it. Not yet. Because something told me this was going to change everything. The envelope felt strangely heavy in my hands for something so thin. I sat down at the small kitchen table, the kind with the faded, sunflower-stitched runner that Grandma had refused to throw out even when it started fraying at the edges. I took a breath and opened it. Her handwriting hit me like a memory. Slanted, elegant cursive with little curls at the ends of each word, just like her. I ran my fingers across the ink before reading. My dearest Rachel, if you're reading this, it means I've passed and that you've come back, which means you're braver than most. I'm sorry I couldn't say all this to you in person, but your mother, she wouldn't have let me. She was afraid of what I might tell you. I need you to know something that was kept from you. About this house, about what's yours. There's a box under the floorboards in the sewing room closet. You'll know it when you find it. I never told them it existed, not your mother, not Ryan. But I always meant for you to have it. Because you were the only one who ever asked how I really was. You listened. Be careful, sweetheart, and trust your gut. Always. Love, Grandma. Ruth. I froze. A box hidden in the floorboards. My eyes scanned the letter again, tracing every word. My pulse quickened, not in fear, but in a strange, quiet recognition. This house wasn't just a memory vault. It was a hiding place, a key, a puzzle. I hadn't seen Grandma Ruth in the last month of her life. Mom said she was too sick for visitors. But that didn't make sense. Grandma and I used to talk every Sunday. Suddenly, the calls stopped. No explanation. Now I was beginning to understand why. Someone wanted to keep me out, away, silent. But they forgot something very simple. I was her granddaughter, and I don't leave things unfinished. The sewing room door creaked open like a secret surrendering. It smelled like old cedar and fabric starch. Dust motes danced in the soft morning light pouring through the lace curtains. Everything was untouched, like Grandma had just stepped out for tea and would be right back. The machine sat in the corner, its foot pedal still plugged in. Bolts of cloth were neatly rolled in the cabinet. It looked innocent enough. But I wasn't here for nostalgia. I walked to the closet and knelt down. The floor creaked slightly beneath my weight, and I felt along the corners, pressing against each wooden plank. Just as I was about to pull back, I heard it, a soft, hollow sound under the third board from the left. Heart racing, I wedged my fingers underneath and pried it up. There it was. A small wooden box, the kind with metal latches and smooth, rounded edges. The kind you'd pass by in an antique store without ever knowing it carried someone's whole story. I lifted it out and placed it on the floor. It was heavier than it looked. I opened the lid slowly. Inside were folders, yellowing legal documents, property records, handwritten notes, and a will. Not a copy. The original. Signed, dated, witnessed. It was Grandma Ruth's last will and testament, and it didn't match what Mom had told me at all. I scanned the first page. The name listed as sole beneficiary Rachel Connors. Me, not Ryan, not my mother, just me. There was more. Receipts, letters between Grandma and an attorney in Eugene, a notarized deed transferring ownership of the cottage along with a savings account. Tucked into the side pocket was a photocopy of another will, the one my mother had filed during probate with her name, and Ryan's listed as executors. But it was dated 2 months before Grandma's actual death, and it was unsigned. My blood ran cold. They lied. They must have. They had tried to erase me from everything. But Grandma had known. She'd trusted me to find the truth. And now I had proof. I didn't scream. I didn't call them. I didn't even cry. I closed the box, returned the floorboard to its place, and sat there on the rug for a long, still moment. My hands resting on my lap, my heart calm in a way that felt almost eerie. This wasn't just betrayal. This was strategy. Calculated exclusion. A slow, quiet erasure. They thought they'd gotten away with it because I was the one who never fought back, the one who kept the peace, the one who showed up with gifts and gratitude even when I wasn't invited to the table. But Grandma had seen me, and now I saw everything. That afternoon, I drove into town and found a print and ship store. I made high-resolution scans of every document, each page of the original will, the notarized deed, the attorney correspondence, and even the forged, unsigned draft they had tried to pass off as real. I emailed copies to myself, backed them up to a secure drive, and locked the originals in the glove compartment of my car. Then I drove back to the cottage and sat by the fire drinking tea, watching snowfall. They had no idea I was here. No idea I had the will. No idea that their narrative was about to crack apart like thin ice. I kept checking my phone, expecting a text, a call, some flimsy apology. But silence. It wasn't just that they didn't want me home. They didn't expect me to matter. That right there was their biggest mistake. Because I wasn't just going to reclaim what was mine. I was going to let them see me clearly for the first time. And by the time they did, it would already be too late. I drove back to Denver on the morning of December 23rd. I didn't play music on the way. I didn't take calls. The silence became a kind of armor, one I didn't even realize I needed, until the mountains slipped past my window and the city skyline came into view. I had made an appointment with Lydia McKenna, a probate attorney I'd worked with through a past design client. She was sharp, discreet, and fiercely thorough, exactly the kind of person you wanted when you suspected something wasn't just wrong, but illegal. We met in her office the following morning. She read silently, her glasses sliding halfway down her nose as she flipped through the documents I had scanned, printed, and stacked into a tidy binder. When she finally looked up, her expression was somewhere between impressed and livid. "Rachel," she said slowly, "this will is valid, completely legal, witnessed, and notarized properly. It should have gone through the court after your grandmother passed." "But it didn't," I said. She nodded. "Because someone either hid it or replaced it before probate was filed, which frankly is serious. This isn't just shady, it could be criminal." I sat still. "So, they committed fraud," Lydia exhaled. "If they knowingly filed a forged or revoked version of a will, yes. That's willful fraud. At the very least, it's grounds for revocation of the filed version and full restoration of your rightful claim." My stomach turned not from nerves, but from clarity. They didn't just push me away emotionally. They tried to rob me. And now they were going to face consequences, not a tantrum, not a confrontation, but something far colder, legal correction. Lydia gave me a list of steps: formal petition to reopen the estate, copies of documentation to submit, and a statement I'd need to file about discovering the original will. She offered to handle it personally. I didn't hesitate. "Let's do it," she smiled. "They won't see this coming. Neither will they forget it." Christmas came and went without a word from them. I saw it all on social media, the same perfectly filtered photos of Mom's holiday centerpiece. The same close-up of Ryan carving the ham like he was the golden child in a Hallmark movie. Their captions were predictable: family is everything. Blessed to be together this season. And me, not even a passing mention. No tag, no text, no seat at the table. But while they were unwrapping presents under the tree, I wasn't welcome near. I was signing documents that would change the course of this family forever. Lydia filed the petition to reopen Grandma's estate on December 27th. Because the original will was legally valid and previously unfiled, we had the right to submit a motion to replace the fraudulent filing, freeze any distributions already made, and request an immediate review by the probate court. Everything was handled quietly. No press, no confrontation, just the slow, unstoppable turn of the legal wheel. By the first week of January, the notices went out. Official court letters, certified mail, one to my mother's address, one to Ryan's office, one to the county clerk who had rubber-stamped the fake version months earlier. And on January 6th at 10:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. I didn't answer. He called again, then Mom. I let them ring. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was letting the truth do the talking. And it was speaking louder than I ever had. The third time she called that morning, I picked up. "Rachel," my mother said sharply, too sharply, like she had been practicing the tone but couldn't quite control it. "What is this nonsense you're pulling?" Her voice was no longer calm, no longer composed. I leaned back in my chair, letting her words sit in the air between us like fog. "You mean the court notice?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Don't be cute," she snapped. "This is completely unnecessary. Your grandmother's estate was already settled months ago." "Was it?" I said softly. Silence. Then her voice shifted, not angry, but uncertain. How did you even get involved again?" I let that one hang. Let her wonder. Let her sweat. "Let's just say," I replied, "Grandma didn't leave everything as disorganized as you thought." Another pause. And then the switch, as predictable as always. From dismissal to guilt. From superiority to damage control. "Sweetheart," she said suddenly, "this whole thing, it's probably just a mistake. I'm sure we can fix this without lawyers getting involved. Why don't you come over? We can talk like a family." I almost laughed. But instead I smiled to myself. "We stopped being a family the day you told me not to come home." She inhaled sharply. And before she could respond, I continued. "I'm not angry, Mom. I'm not even surprised. I'm just done pretending. I have the will, the real one. Signed, notarized, and submitted. And whether you like it or not, the truth is going to come out." Her voice cracked. "Rachel, we didn't mean—" "You meant everything you did," I said. "And now it's my turn." Then I hung up. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting to be accepted. I was preparing to be acknowledged. Legally, publicly, permanently. I hadn't planned to see him. I was walking out of Lydia's office when I saw Ryan, standing outside the cafe across the street, tapping away on his phone like he didn't have a care in the world. But when he looked up and saw me, his expression cracked, just for a second. Then came the smirk, the one he used to wear when he let me win at board games as a kid. He walked toward me with mock casualness, like this was a happy coincidence. "Wow," he said, stuffing his hands into his coat pockets. "Fancy running into you." "I was going to call." I didn't bother with small talk. "You got the notice." He nodded, eyes narrowing. "I did." "Then you know I have the will. The real one." He tilted his head slightly like he was still trying to calculate whether I was bluffing. "Rach, come on," he said. "You really think stirring this up is worth it?" We all moved on. "Grandma was alive when the fake will was dated," I cut in. "And you know it." The smirk disappeared. "Just like that. You don't want this to get messy," he said after a pause. "It already is," I replied. "And that's not my fault. Do you know how much legal damage you could cause? Do you even care what this looks like for the family?" I laughed once, bitter and brief. "Did you care when you filed forged documents? When you cut me out entirely? When you let Mom tell me not to come home for Christmas like I was some stranger?" He said nothing. Because what could he say? I stepped closer, calm and measured. "Here's the part you're not ready for, Ryan. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this because it's mine. Because Grandma trusted me. And because neither you nor Mom gets to rewrite the truth." His mouth opened, then closed. And for the first time in our lives, he looked small. Not powerful. Not favored. Just a man caught in a lie. I turned and walked away before he could answer. Because this time, I wasn't giving him the space to twist anything. The truth was finally speaking, and I was done whispering. The courtroom was quiet. Too quiet for what was about to unfold. It wasn't a dramatic trial with a jury or gavel pounding theatrically. This was probate court. Tidy, procedural. But that didn't mean it lacked weight. When Lydia and I walked in, I could feel the shift. Ryan was already seated. Mom sat beside him in a gray suit she probably wore to church, the one that always said, "I'm respectable." She didn't look at me. Their attorney, a man with sharp features and a thinning voice, was speaking with the court clerk. When our case was called, we rose. Lydia began calmly. "Your Honor, we're submitting for consideration the previously undisclosed, legally valid, and notarized original will of the late Ruth Connors, dated 3 weeks before her passing. It lists my client, Rachel Connors, as the sole beneficiary. We believe the prior filing submitted by Ms. Connors' daughter and grandson was outdated, unverified, and knowingly used to misrepresent the estate's true intent." The judge nodded, flipping through the documents Lydia handed over. His expression changed subtly when he reached the signature page. "This is recent," he said, glancing at the dates, "and notarized." The opposing counsel stood up. "Your Honor, we have no intention of undermining the decedent's wishes. But to be clear, my clients had no knowledge of this version of the will. It was not among the documents they found, and they acted in good faith based on the materials available to them." Lydia didn't even flinch. "Your Honor, we also submit as evidence the discovery of this will in the family home concealed beneath floorboards, along with correspondence between the decedent and her legal advisor in Eugene suggesting she had specifically intended this to be her final directive." There was a pause in the room. Even the court clerk stopped typing. The judge looked at Ryan and my mother, then back at the files. "So, you're saying this version, the one that excludes Ms. Connors, was submitted based on incomplete or false information?" Their lawyer fumbled. "Not deliberately, Your Honor. It's possible the decedent had meant to change her will, but never finalized it." But the judge wasn't buying it. Except she did. "This document is clear and legal and hidden, apparently." He leaned back, tapping his pen. "This matter requires further examination. In the meantime, I'm freezing all estate activity and ordering full disclosure from both parties. Ms. Connors," he turned to me, "you did the right thing by coming forward." I nodded quietly. Not a smirk, not a glare, just stillness. Because they hadn't just tried to erase me. They gambled on me, staying quiet. And now they were sitting in silence, watching the pieces fall exactly where they didn't expect. It was late. Snow was falling again, gentle, almost kind. And then came the knock at my door. I knew it was her before I even looked through the peephole. I opened it, slowly. There she stood, my mother wrapped in the same winter coat she'd worn to Grandma's funeral, her hands gripping a handbag like it might protect her from what came next. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I stepped aside without a word. We sat across from each other at my small kitchen table. No teacups, no fake warmth. Just the sound of the heater clicking in the background and the weight of everything unsaid sitting between us. "You've made your point," she said finally. I didn't respond. "We didn't mean to shut you out. Things just moved fast after your grandmother passed. You were busy. You didn't come to help with the arrangements. We assumed—" "No," I interrupted. "You decided." She flinched. "And now I added, you're not here to apologize. You're here to negotiate." Her face tightened. "If this goes public, Rachel, it'll ruin your brother's career. Our family name. I'm asking quietly if we can settle this among ourselves. We're willing to divide the assets more fairly." 50-50. "Fairly," I repeated. "As in, the version where you take half of what Grandma gave me, the will she wrote after I sat by her side for 2 years while you two sent her holiday cards?" She looked away. "Don't do this to us," she whispered. That was the moment I truly saw her not as the woman who raised me, but as someone who feared exposure more than consequence. "I'm not doing anything to you," I said. "I'm just not letting you do this to me anymore." She looked up, eyes glistening. "Rachel, you told me not to come home for Christmas," I said. "And now you're sitting in my kitchen asking for mercy. That's not how this ends." I stood, walked to the door, and opened it. "You can leave now." She rose, slowly hesitated, then walked past me without another word. She didn't slam the door. She didn't cry. She just left. And I stood there in the silence, not triumphant, but free, because I didn't need their money. I needed my dignity back, and I had just taken it. The ruling came on a Thursday morning. I was sitting in Lydia's office again, watching the snow blur against the window. When the judge's written opinion arrived by email, Lydia opened it slowly, but she didn't have to read the whole thing. Just the first paragraph said it all. The court recognizes the last valid and notarized will of the decedent Ruth Connors, dated, redacted, as the true reflection of her final intent. All prior filings are considered superseded or invalid. Full ownership of the estate shall be transferred to Rachel Connors. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just sat still. Because somehow winning didn't feel like vengeance. It felt like peace. Word spread quickly in town. Small towns have long memories and even longer gossip lines. People began whispering at church functions in grocery aisles at post offices. "Did you hear the daughter wasn't in the will at all?" No, turns out she was the only one. I always thought Rachel took care of Ruth more than anyone. I wasn't there to defend myself. But I didn't need to be. The truth was louder than any apology they'd never offered. Ryan's real estate firm started losing clients. My mother resigned from the Historical Society board within the week, and I took the deed to the house Grandma left me. I went back to that porch swing, the one she used to sit on with me when I was little. And for the first time, I swung alone, and it felt complete. Because no one could take this from me again. Not with signatures, not with silence, not with shame. A week after the ruling, a handwritten envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address. But the handwriting, careful, slightly tilted, was familiar. It was Aunt Meredith, Mom's older sister. The one who never said anything when I was left out of family group texts, who smiled politely at Christmas but never asked why I wasn't in the photo. I opened the letter slowly. "Dear Rachel, I don't know if you'll read this, but I hope you will. I've thought about writing a dozen times before but didn't know how to start. The truth is, I should have spoken up years ago. I knew about the real will. Your grandmother told me. She showed it to me. I told your mother it wasn't right to ignore it, but she said she had it handled and that it would only cause chaos if we changed anything. I didn't want to get in the middle, so I stayed quiet. But you didn't, and I admire you more than I can say for that. I hope one day, if you ever feel ready, we could sit down. Maybe over tea. No pressure. Just two women talking about what we should have said a long time ago. Love, Meredith." I stared at the letter for a long time. Not because I was angry, not even because I was moved, but because I was still. Like someone had finally acknowledged the storm, but too late to stop the flood. I folded it gently and placed it in my drawer. Not the trash, not a keepsake box, just somewhere I could decide on later. Because forgiveness wasn't out of reach, it was just no longer urgent. I didn't need Meredith's apology to feel whole. I already was. But I appreciated it. And maybe that was enough. The house was quiet again. Not silent like abandonment, quiet like peace. I walked through the rooms slowly, remembering where Grandma kept the good china, where she taught me to knit, where she used to sit by the window and hum old jazz tunes that never made it to Spotify. This house wasn't just an inheritance. It was a witness to her life, to my becoming, to every moment they tried to erase but couldn't. So I decided I wouldn't just own it, I'd honor it. The first thing I did was restore the upstairs guest room, turning it into a study. Then I filed the paperwork for the Ruth Connors Foundation, a scholarship fund, not for top students, not for legacy kids, but for students like me, the overlooked, the written off, the ones who were told they weren't family enough, smart enough, good enough. The fund's first scholarship was awarded to a 17-year-old girl named Kiana, kicked out of her home after coming out as queer. She wrote in her application, "I just need one person to believe I'm worth it." I sent her a handwritten note with the award letter. So did I. And now we both know we are. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about courtrooms or signatures. It was about legacy. Grandma's name would live on, not in stained glass or gold plaques, but in futures that had been doubted, just like mine had been. It was Christmas Eve. The tree in the corner glowed with warm amber lights. No flashy ornaments, just ones I made myself or found in the attic, tucked in boxes marked Ruth's Winter. There were 7 of us at the table. Lydia, my attorney turned friend. Kiana, the scholarship recipient, home from her first semester. Mr. Alvarez, Grandma's former neighbor who still brought homemade tamales every December. A retired nurse from the local hospice, and 2 women from the community center who'd once told me I inspired them when really it was the other way around. I made roast chicken, not turkey. We toasted with cider instead of wine. We laughed more than we ate, and no one was waiting to start a fight. No one was pretending to be perfect. No one said I was too emotional or ungrateful or selfish. When dessert came, Grandma's peach cobbler recipe, I lit one candle in her memory and whispered, "We made it, Grandma. We're okay." Because we were. Not fixed, not polished, not suddenly whole, but okay in that slow, beautiful way that healing feels. The family that told me not to come home. They didn't know I was going to build a home. And the woman they dismissed as not part of the plan, she became the architect of something stronger than any bloodline. Because at the end of the day, family isn't who shares your name. It's who stands beside you when you have nothing left to give and still calls you enough. And this Christmas, I was finally enough. Not because they said so, but because I believed it.